Good Vach, Shavua Tov, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. We're continuing our study of Mesil Yesharim from the Ramchal, the Path of the Just, the step-by-step guide to how to become perfect servants of Hashem. And we're in the middle of chapter 11, a very, very long chapter, where the Ramchal goes through mitzvos which are commonly not observed the proper way by people, and he tells us the details of these mitzvahs so that we can work on observing them with more diligence. And the first section of chapter 11 was talking about theft, gezel, and we learned that theft doesn't just mean going in and robbing a bank, but it means being honest in business, and when you're a worker, to work to your full ability and not to take time off. And then he goes on to talk about arayas, acts of sexual immorality, and the reason he does this is because why he talks about these two areas first is because the Gemara says that Rubam begazel umiyut be'arayas, that meaning most people commit some sort of theft and a few people commit arayas, but they're still very common sins. And we're in the middle of talking about arayas, acts of sexual immorality, and he's discussing now that it's not only the action itself of sexual immorality which is a problem, meaning the Torah prohibits relationships with certain people. The Torah prohibits adultery, incest, homosexuality, the act of homosexuality, and other types of sexual misdeeds. And the Ramchal is pointing out that it's not only the sexual act itself, which is prohibited by the Torah, but also other things related to that act. And we already discussed that other physical things are prohibited, like hugging and kissing those who are prohibited to one. And he brought an example from Nazir, that a Nazir is someone who says that he's not going to partake of wine. He takes a special vow, and one of the things is that he's not going to partake of wine, and the Torah forbids even any derivative of grapes in order to make a fence around the Torah. So in addition to the actual sexual act of intercourse being prohibited, other physical things are also prohibited, like hugging and kissing and things that could lead to that. And now he's going to explain that not only are physical acts prohibited when it comes to arayas, but also acts of speech, listening, and even in thought. And he's going to discuss examples and how we have to be careful in that. And you see that to attain holiness, one has to limit himself in these areas. Now, Judaism does not believe in celibacy. These things are not evil. These Shavua Tov, thanks. These things are not evil things, but it has to be done within the proper context, in the context of marriage and in holiness, and we have to use our physical desires for holiness. I think Rav Yaakov Emden said that the holiest part of a body, at least the male body, is the aver, the part where a bris is done, because that organ, because it has a power to create worlds. You can create new human beings with that, and just like it has the power for holiness, it also has the power for impurity, because anything that has a potential for holiness has a potential for impurity also. So Judaism doesn't believe again in celibacy and not doing these things, but rather directing them when they're permitted in permitted ways and sanctifying those acts. But since many of these acts are prohibited, Judaism has a realistic view of the sex drive, in that it can be very overpowering. So therefore the Torah itself, not just the rabbis later, but the Torah itself forbid things that might lead to sexual indiscretions. So let's continue where we left off. It says Va'ata. We're on page, we use the elucidated Mesil Yesharim from Art Scroll, the Jaffa edition. So we're in the middle of chapter 11, but if you have the same edition that we use, it's page 191 in the middle. Va'ata avilacha rayos akol ele medivrehim zichron levracha. I will now bring you proofs from all of their words, the words of the rabbis. B'maisa dahainu hanagia o achiba kukyotzi kfar nizbar lamala b'maisa shesacharnu ve'ein tzarich laharach. We already explained how hugging and kissing, those that are in things like that it's forbidden, like we explained already, and we don't have to go in and discuss that at great length. B're'iyah, sight, looking at arayas, looking at things that one shouldn't look at. Amru zechar levracha, the rabbi said, Yad liyad lo yinake ra. This is from hand to hand he will not be spared from evil. Kol hamaratza maos miyado liyada kedei lehistakel ba lo yinake mibdina shel gehenim. So the Gemara derives from that verse in Mishlei that somebody who even does a seemingly simple act where he's giving change to a woman, but the reason that he does it is to look at her, meaning he creates a pretext to gaze at a woman who he's attracted to, he is not saved from the din of Gehenna, from the din of the justice of hell. So it's a pretty serious thing. So again, he's creating a pretext to give change to a woman to gaze at her inappropriately. Va'amru od, right? This is Me Too before there was Me Too. That especially men have to, everyone has to be careful, but especially men have to control themselves in these areas, right? It's not like the Torah just prohibited relations with certain people and then everything else you have carte blanche, because the Torah is realistic. They know, the Torah knows, Hashem knows, He created a human, so He knows us best, that if certain things would be allowed but just one thing would be prohibited, it would be very hard for human beings to control themselves. So the Torah makes that people shouldn't even get into those sticky situations. Someone actually told me, I think that the army, certain rules for the army for between fraternization between men and women reads like Hilchos Yichud, the laws that men and women can't be secluded together. Right? The Torah also prohibits that, men and women being secluded together, because who knows what could happen. And someone told me that the guidebook for the U.S. Army is very similar to the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, when it comes to the laws of Yichud. Okay, the Amr Od. Furthermore, it says, Mipnei ma hutzruchu Yisrael shebe'oso hadar kapara. Why did the Jews in that generation need kapara? Why did they need atonement? So it's talking about when the Jewish people conquered Midian. The people who were conquering it, they didn't sin with the Midianite women when they were fighting the war. I believe they had sinned earlier, but during the battle they had seen immoral Midianite women. They just gazed at them. So why did they need kapara? The Gemara says, they looked at inappropriate things. They looked at lewdness. So we see that even for looking at lewdness, they needed an atonement. They didn't commit any act at that point. It was just for looking at it. Amr Rav Sheshes said, why does the Torah include the outer adornments that these women would wear with their inner adornments? Meaning they had some jewelry that was, used in the private places. Lomer lecha, to tell you, shekol hamistakel be'etzba ketana shel isha, ki'ilu mistakel b'makom ha'teirif. Is that someone who looks at the small pinky of a woman is like he looks at her private parts. So very serious. Now the Art Scroll quotes the Rambam here that's saying that's when you look at it for enjoyment. Right? The halacha is that you're allowed to look at a woman. That's fine. But you're not allowed to look at a woman for enjoyment, right? You can't stare at her because you want to, again, this is speaking to men, obviously, that you're looking at a woman to gain enjoyment because you want to look. That's what's prohibited. Just looking at a woman, that is not prohibited. However, looking at a place in a woman that is usually covered, that is uncovered, even if you're not looking for enjoyment, you're just glancing, that is problematic. That is prohibited. So again, looking at a woman in a place that is not normally covered, just at her face, that is not a prohibition. Looking at it, any part of a woman, even her small pinky for enjoyment, that is a prohibition. Looking at the part of a woman that is uncovered, that is usually covered, but now it's uncovered, even if it's not for enjoyment, that is also a prohibition. That's why many religious, depending on what community you're from, some people are more careful with others. They go above and they don't look at pictures of women and things like that. I heard a big rabbi say that men shouldn't look at their wedding pictures where there's like pictures of women, because it's very easy to look for enjoyment. Now again, a lot if it's not halacha, a lot of these things depend on the sensitivity of the community, but there is something to it. We see from here. If you want to look more into this, about the halachas, you should look in the Mishnah Brura 75.7. Despite what many people say, this is actually a halacha. It is a Jewish law, just like any other Jewish law, any other halacha that is found in Shulchan Aruch, and it's not just a midas chasidus, an extra stringency. But as the Ramchal is going to say, I believe he's going to say it himself, that many people think a lot of these laws are just stringencies, but they're actually real halachas. Now, and we should try our best to live by them. Okay, let's continue. Va'amru od, it says furthermore, v'nishmarta mikol davara, you should guard yourself from any evil thing. Shelo yistakel adam be'isha na, afilu hipnuya, a man should not look at a woman, an attractive woman, even if she's single. Be'eshes ish, va'afilu himucha ares, and he should not look at a married woman, even if she's unattractive, right? It's even worse. Okay, so that's when it comes to seeing. So we see there is a prohibition for sure a prohibition to look at women for enjoyment, and it's a prohibition to look at women in a part that is usually covered. So one has to be careful with that, because these types of things, right? The Torah knows that when men look at women, that arouses certain thoughts and even certain actions, which the Torah prohibits, but even looking itself is a prohibition. Now, be'inyan hadibor, what about speech? Imaisha. Behed Yeshanina, we learned explicitly in Tractate Avos, Kol Hamar B'Sicha Imaisha, whoever speaks a lot with a woman, Garim Rala Atzmo, he causes evil to befall himself. Ubishmiya, so that's with speech. Ubishmiya Amru, with listening. Kol B'Isha Erva. It says the voice of a woman is erva, is forbidden. So what does it mean? Usually singing. To listen to a woman sing is forbidden, because usually listen to a woman sing, that can cause one to have impure thoughts. And now, again, the idea of all these laws is that the Jewish people is a people that has to live on a holy level. So when the mind is constantly thinking, right, especially living in our society, we're constantly bombarded with sexual imagery in every aspect of society. I need not tell anyone that. It's pretty obvious. If someone's always thinking about these things, then it's very hard to think about holy matters and to think of Torah and to live our true purpose, which is to be a holy people involved in matters of holiness, and to direct these drives for positive things, but not to be always. If a person is always consumed with sexual thoughts, then he can't be involved with holiness. The Rambam says thoughts of Torah and these types of thoughts are opposites, and the same mind can't have them at the same time. So it's things that we're very careful about avoiding. So listening to a woman sing, that's prohibited. Od be'inyan znus hapeh v'ha'ozen. Also, speaking and listening to speech about inappropriate things. Dahainu hadibur b'divrei haznus o ashmiya l'dvar ma'ela. To speak about znus, about inappropriate things, or to listen to inappropriate things, right? To listen and to talk about sexual matters. That's prohibited. The rabbis already yelled about this. V'liyur b'cha ervas davar. You should not see erva. Ervas dibor is the nivul peh. So they use the word from davar to dibor, that you shouldn't talk nivul peh. You shouldn't talk about inappropriate things, matters of immorality. V'amru, it says, ba'av navalus peh tzaras mischadshos. It says that when people talk about inappropriate things, when people talk about sexual matters, bad things happen. Pain comes to the world. Ubachuri soneim shoyisro mesim, and young men die. Young Jewish men die, it says. V'amru od, kol hamanabel piv ma'amikim lo gehenim. Whoever makes his mouth speak dirty things, inappropriate things, it deepens hell for him. V'amru od, it says, hakol yodim kala lama nechneses l'chuppah. Everybody knows why a bride goes to is married. Kol hamanabel piv v'amru, but whoever dirties his mouth and says it, afilu gazar din shel shivim shana l'taiva haifchem l'ra. Even if he has 70 years, a gezerah of 70 years for good, they will be switched to evil. So again, even a simple thing like that, that's an example of inappropriate speech. Everyone knows why a man and woman get married. Everyone knows what happens after, but to verbalize it, to say why, that could cause a person who has 70 years of good decreed upon him for all of that to be switched to evil. V'amru od, it says furthermore, afilu sicha kalash ben ish leishta magidin lo la'adam b'shas hadin. When a person is judged in front of Hashem, even the small things that he said to his wife will be repeated back to him. Ube'inyan hashmiya hara hazois gam kin amru, about listening to inappropriate things. Afa shamea v'shaisek. Shneimar zeum Hashem yipol sham harei lecha shekol hachushim tzrichos lios nikim min haznus uminyano. Right, it says someone that is listening to a lewd conversation and doesn't protest. It says that the scorn of Hashem will fall upon him, so he'll get punished. So we see that with every one of our senses, we have to avoid inappropriate things. Okay, let's continue. If a person would say, maybe you'll tell me, maybe a person will say, speaking about sexual topics and inappropriate things, that's to just distance a person from sin. And it's only talking about a person who'll get excited by talking about these things. He'll have inappropriate thoughts. That'll bring him to lustful things. But someone who's just telling a joke, that's not a big deal, right? We could joke about it. We're not talking about these things to get ourselves aroused. We're just telling jokes. Maybe a person will say that's fine. You should say to him, until here is the Yetzer Hara. So Right. People sometimes say, all these things, they're just extra stringencies. We don't have to worry about it. And especially me, I'm a very holy person. I don't get aroused by these things, right? The rabbis, I know the rabbis say these guidelines, but I don't get aroused by these things. Doesn't matter. The Ramchal tells us to say, until here is the Yetzer Hara. That's the evil inclination trying to get us to sin. I think there's this famous story, I'll probably get the details wrong. It was about someone told their mashgiach in yeshiva, I think there's no problem going to the beach because they look at women, it's not a big deal to them, it doesn't bother them. And the rabbi clapped on the bima and said, quick, somebody get this guy a doctor. He said, let's be realistic. There's stories of, I think Rabbi Ruderman, I think it was with, when he was very, very old. And there's laws of yichud, similar, not exactly what we're talking about, but similar. One's not, like we mentioned, one's not allowed to be secluded with a woman. And he was, I think in his 90s, and he was like half blind. And he would have Bachram stay with him. I think his wife had already passed away. And he wasn't allowed to be in the house alone with the nurse that would take care of him. And apparently she was very unattractive, but nevertheless, and he had trouble seeing. He was in his 90s or his 80s. He had Bachram stay with him. A young male student stay with him, because that's the halacha. So if Rabbi Ruderman, if very old men are very careful with these halachas, all the more so younger men. And when people say that they don't get aroused by these things, they could listen to women singing, they could do X, Y, Z. As the Ramchal tells us, that is a Yetzer Hara. Do not be fooled by that. Do not let yourself be fooled by that. Okay, Ki Mikra Mali Shehevihu Zichron Levracha. The rabbis bring a full verse about this. L'Rayasam. It says, Al Kain Al Bechurav Lo Yismach Hashem V'chulei Kuchulo Chanef Umeira V'chol Peh Diver Navala. It says that Hashem will not, my Lord shall not rejoice over their young men. It says he will not pity their orphans and widows, for they are all flattery and evil, and every mouth utters indecency. Hine lo hiskar kasvazeh lo avodah zara v'alo gilei rayis. All these bad things. What are they for? It doesn't say idolatry. It doesn't say gilei rayis for the shvichas dam. It doesn't say actual acts of sexual morality. It doesn't say murder. Ala chanufa v'lashon hara v'nivul peh. Rather, sins that come from the mouth. That's what causes these bad things, which is flattery, lashon hara, evil speech, and nivul peh, and talking about sexual matters. Kulam mechata sapeh bedibur v'aleim yatsa hagzera. From all of these sins through evil speech and other sins through speech, so speaking about sexual things, al bechurav lo yismach, the young men, they will not rejoice. Hashem, they will not rejoice. Ve'es yisema ve'es almanaisav lo yirachem, and he will not have mercy on the orphans and the widows. So very bad things for people who do this. El ha'emesu kedivri rabbeinu zerachon. The truth is like the rabbis tell us. Nivul pehu ervasa shel hadibur mamish. That nivul peh is erva of the mouth, mamish, literally. Umishum znus hu shenesar. And it is forbidden, just like everything else is about znus. Chutz megufa shel ma'isa she'afa pi she'ein behem kares u'mizes bezdin asur mehem iser atzmo l'vadiosem gam kim gormen u'meviim ala iser harashi atzmo k'enyin ha'nazir she'zacharnu b'minja she'emin l'mala. So, and he says all of these things, even though that only the sexual act itself carries the stringent penalties in the Torah, nevertheless, these things are prohibited because they are actual sins, and they could lead to the actual act of sexual immorality. So we'll conclude with this last part of this topic. I know it's a little longer than usual. About thinking about impure things, thinking about sexual matters. It says, it says that you will guard yourself from every evil thing. A person shouldn't think about sexual things during the day, that he should have a seminal emission at night. It says that thinking about the sin is worse than the sin itself. It's a verse, it says, Toavas Hashem machshavas ra, abomination to Hashem are evil thoughts. So, it says that thinking sexual thoughts are actually, in a way, it's worse, because the Nefesh HaChaim speaks about this at length. I believe that the thoughts, the machshava, is more closely tied to the neshama of a person, and it really goes deeper into making spiritual kilkulim. Also, it says that what Titus did in the Beis Hamikdash, when Titus destroyed the temple and conquered Jerusalem, he took a prostitute into the Holy of Holies, unwrapped a Sefer Torah, and had relations with her on the Torah in the Holy of Holies. It says when a Jewish person has a sexual thought, that it has more negative, it's worse than what Titus did, because it has more negative impacts in the spiritual realm. So even thoughts, right? You think about how much we have to serve Hashem, that even our thoughts have to be controlled in our service of Hashem. And again, we read all these things. This is what we're aiming for. That doesn't mean we have to be there overnight, but we try our best to get to these things. But the idea is that the Torah just doesn't prohibit, when acts of sexual immorality, the actual acts of sexual immorality. But we have to be careful what we listen to, what we speak about, what we look at, and what we think. And the idea is that a Jewish person is supposed to live his life in sanctity and holiness. And if a person is constantly involved with these things, then he won't be able to do that. And hope everyone has a good week. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message. And okay, thanks for listening.